Welcome everyone. We thought with the pressing news of course, the testing release of AI overviews, it'd be really great to get together and share from our perspective what we are seeing, how we can prepare, how our customers need to also get their ducks in a row as well in order to succeed with AI overviews. So here today I have myself, James Perrot, SEO Director here at Precis, responsible for the overall group of around now 40 colleagues across many markets. And I also have Kristina with me, and you are leading our Swedish operation.
Indeed.
Yes. So I feel like between us, we're going to be able to share some information and also some guidance, and also perhaps allay any fears that we're seeing as well. So shall we get into it?
Let's do it.
Nice. Okay. So as we have seen, as everyone has seen over the weekend, we have seen testing from Google around AI overviews in particular, and that is the primary focus of this chat. Of course, we've seen a lot within the Gen AI platforms like ChatGPT, Perplexity, etc. And that is something that is, of course, ongoing and developing, and that is perhaps a separate topic to this today. We're going to very much deep dive into AI overviews. So I think the best place to start is, why are we talking about it from the SEO side of things? You know, because of course AI overviews are impacting media and all of our friends in the different areas of the business as well. But I think probably the SEO solution group from Precis's perspective is best suited to tackling this challenge. And, you know, because I think we have worked rigorously for many years around, of course, working with Google and their ranking algorithms, but that is now slightly changing because, of course, Google has developed over the years with, you know, from 50 to 100 to countless numbers of ranking signals that we are forever optimizing towards with our team. But now that is shifting. With the introduction of AI overviews here in the Nordics, we are now shifting from checkboxes and best content and all of our traditional factors into a citation world. So very much in the sense of, we are now in the hands of AI to determine, does our brand and our clients get mentioned, yes or no? So it's a very daunting new world that we're taking tiptoes into now in the Nordics. But I think this is now, you know, a great time to discuss this hypothesis we have and take it from there. What are your initial thoughts of seeing the development over the weekend?
Yeah, it's interesting that it's now, because it's been basically exactly a year since it was launched in the US. And it was just a matter of time. We've been waiting for this to happen. And I'm not surprised. Some people might have thought that it would take a bit longer to come to the Nordics, but yeah, it's here now. And it's rolling out. It's not officially launched. And so to talk a little bit more about what's actually happened. So like I said, there's no official launch from Google's point of view, but we're seeing the rollout. And we've seen it in Sweden, we've seen it in Denmark, in Finland, and in Norway.
Yes.
So it's basically here. And what it is in a nutshell, for those who aren't that familiar with AI overviews, it's basically a layer of a AI generated answer on top of the paid and organic search results in Google. So it's answering the questions for the user. So there's no longer that need to perhaps scroll down and look at the other results. And it's basically an answer very similar to what you'd see in a chatbot. And so it's an answer generated by a large language model to basically answer the query of the user as quick and efficient as possible. And obviously Google's aim is to be helpful to their users, but Google's aim is also to compete with other companies coming into stealing market share, like ChatGPT and other chatbots out there. And so this is really a race for the AI as well that we need to keep in mind.
The interesting thing is Google still dominates the market share. We do know that, of course, generative AI platforms are stealing more and more users and search demand in general, but now this is Google's response to that move.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's talk a bit about like why this is important, or why this matters to us right now. Why are we talking about this?
Yeah, I mean, this is the exciting part, I guess, in our world of SEO, because of course, you know, the 10 blue links have been a thing that us in the SEO world have been forever obsessed about, whether that being, you know, from a ranking perspective, impressions, click-through rate. That has been our ecosystem for as long as I've worked in this industry. So now that has completely evolved into a platform where it's kind of the evolution of featured snippets that were introduced some years ago. And now, you know, it is a world in which we have to adapt.
And we can take some learnings from what's happened in the US over the
Yes.
last year to get an insight into what's actually going to happen now in the Nordic market for our clients. And one example is that we're seeing about 37%, I think it is.
Yeah, it's between 35 and 37%, right?
Yeah.
Drop off.
Drop off exactly in traffic, and that's just not a little shift.
No.
A major seismic shift. So this is something that we need to keep an eye on, and also something to keep in mind is obviously the click-through rates will decrease to a rate of below 1% when AI overviews are shown for organic results. And that's obviously a drop from maybe like 4% on average click-through rate for organic results. So that will make a massive impact on the traffic, obviously, like we talked about, but also on the revenue that we can generate from the organic traffic.
Exactly. And I think one big thing as to why we're having this quick session is really to allay fears as well, because when you hear these being shared in the industry, it's very scaremongering. It's very, okay, what do we do? Do we hold on to the desk and see what happens to our brand or to our traffic and to our revenue? But there are things that we know from the research we have conducted and seen from industry reports in the US that we want to share with our audience, right? So we know that this is very aimed towards informational queries. So it's very much like, what is this? Or what is the difference? Or how does this work? So it's very informational driven. And I think the interesting part in particular is how the rest of the SERP changes. So the rest of that first page, what does Google adapt also? And of course, we know that paid results disappear as well from our studies, or at least what we've seen in the US as well. So this isn't just an SEO problem. It really is like a broader performance marketing discussion to be had. So if we're thinking around how to start sizing this up or how do brands prepare, I think this is a really interesting first step, because of course we are seeing it heavily driven at the minute on informational queries. And you spoke earlier about it's been a year since it launched from the US side. And of course, that's Google's largest market. And also it's in English. I think that was my interpretation of maybe it's going to take actually longer for Google to test and fully roll out AI overviews in the Nordics due to language complexity. Everything from Finnish to Swedish, the languages are very different and very complex. So, we've seen Amazon's fail of trying to come into Sweden and with all the language issues. And now perhaps this soft launch from Google is to really stress test sort of the more NLP, like the natural language processing side on these Nordic languages. I don't know if you have any thoughts on the initial AI overviews you've seen, or like the format feels a little a hit and miss so far.
Yeah, the ones that I've seen are maybe not the best kind of answer or format-wise, the best way of answering the queries that people put in. So it's very obvious that it's testing.
Yes.
This is the first kind of stage of seeing what works. And that's obviously why Google hasn't announced the rollout as of yet when recording this video. Everything is happening very fast right now.
It is.
So maybe by the time this is live, things have changed. But I think we should talk a little bit more about what brands need to do right now. What are the actions that we can take right now?
I mean, first of all, we've been out there already preparing our customers and brands around the more, I'd say, holistic shift into Gen AI search. Now it's about both two things from my perspective. How do brands and customers prepare? And also, how do you actually start sizing the risk? I think they're the two things, because of course, many conversations we have with customers are both very much executional driven. So how does the actual work change? But then of course, forecasting for businesses in the more macroeconomic world that we're in right now is so vital and so important for businesses today. So if I take one, I think I can take the side of the risk sizing and preparation from that side, and then you, with your knowledge from the team, take the executional side. So the conversations I've been having have been very much around, we know, as we've already spoken about, the large potential risk is tied to the informational side. We know already from many different tools and keywords that we track, and we're able to segment these into two different buckets. You're very commercially driven, where your revenue is tied, and sort of the consideration phase, and then all the way through to more top funnel and sort of also consideration side for the informational part of your keyword sets. The best part, or the best thing, first step to do is take that informational keyword set and understand, okay, are AI overviews starting to appear? We can run those manually and through your day-to-day keyword tracking tools, and then begin to go, okay, I receive X amount of traffic and maybe leads and conversions and revenue from this segment, and then do worst case scenario and work backwards from that. So as we spoke about, 35 to 37% drop off in clicks, that obviously then has a knock-on effect. I think that is the best place to start at sort of, let's call it ground zero. And then perhaps, this is in the US market where volumes are much higher, and Google also has many more features within their search than they do in the Nordics. So perhaps it may be a little bit less than 35% drop off in the Nordics, but that we will find out. But that is more from the forecasting side. So then into the execution.
Yeah, in terms of execution, like you say, that the tracking and reporting would be the first step. If we're thinking about like, what do we need to do right now? That would be step one. And I think what we need to just take a step back and think about, what are the differences here between optimizing for SEO or working with SEO like we've done for a long time, and the difference then to working with optimizing to be visible in AI overviews or in AI chatbots, basically being able to rank in LLMs, in large language models. There are two kind of different things. Doing really, really good future-proof SEO, yeah, that will take you places, for sure. But it can't guarantee you that visibility in AI overviews, because optimizing for algorithms isn't the same as optimizing for language models. So there is something else that we need to do. And some of those things are very similar to what you would do with SEO. So it's kind of like an add-on, but it is a different way of thinking. And it's to do with obviously how LLMs access and interprets the content of your website, but also access your websites and access the content, understand the structure and all the elements within. But there's also a part of this that's to do with authority and understanding the context and the knowledge graph behind a brand, where we need to think a bit more about where's LLMs taking information from, what kind of sources are they citing when they're recommending a brand for a certain query, for example. Those are the places that we need to go away and analyze and see, why are they visible there? How can we be visible in those sources? Or how can we create content that is the type of content that we see that LLMs are using? And we obviously are using loads of new tools that are on the market right now to be able to track what prompts people are putting into AI chatbots, for example, to get the data of what LLMs are taking information from. And the same will go for AI overviews. There's a lot of research and data that we need to put into to analyze of what are LLMs favoring, and how can we adjust our strategies towards that.
So I have some questions for you off the back of that. So, if I think of the audience listening now, it will be a mixture of our colleagues within Precis across different markets, but of course, customers and potential customers. And one thing that I've seen very much is LinkedIn is a treasure trove of lots of different hot takes on what is happening right now. Some is, optimizing for AI overviews and generative AI platforms. That's just part of SEO. That's just good SEO. We, I think, are forming a perspective of perhaps, we are seeing traffic drops from Google where AI overviews are very prevalent, but revenue does remain pretty stable. So that is a very core thing to consider is, do you just completely shift to AI, being present within these different AI platforms and forget all of that revenue in the commercial side of Google, where queries and search results aren't changing dramatically on that side? Or do you actually continue your SEO efforts and introduce a new line of work where it is understanding how much of an impact on your overall traffic mix are these platforms having, and how do you begin to work on that side? And I think at least my formative idea is it's two different streams. Of course, we've called AEO, Answer Engine Optimization, and SEO, your traditional, our bread and butter for many years. So the question there to you, Kristina, is obviously managing all these different people of different competencies within SEO. Do you have a different perspective on that, or do you? How does the workflow change now?
I would say you kind of answered the question in your question, but it is...
Potentially. That does happen from time to time.
No, it is. We need to keep on doing the bread and butter SEO and add on what we call AEO, or optimizing for AI, because that is the landscape as it is right now. That might shift in the future. We're seeing obviously Google testing AI mode, which is basically a results page that is just AI generated.
Yeah. No blue links, right?
No blue links.
Yeah.
But the links are obviously embedded in different ways. But is that the future? Then surely we should optimize for that. Perhaps. There is definitely that argument to be had, but the situation we're in right now is that we're seeing what we're going to have AI overviews and the normal organic result as well, and paid. So that's the situation we're in right now. So therefore, we need to keep on doing the amazing SEO work we're doing and add on the opportunity to rank as well really well in AI overviews. And the workflows, or how we do this in a different way, or how it shifts, the same competences that we have within the team will apply to executing amazing AEO work as well, because it's the same skills. It's just a different way of thinking about the work that we do. And like I said, optimizing for algorithms, optimizing for LLMs, same thought process behind it. It's still about creating amazing content, creating content that is in line with Google's EEAT guidelines, so expertise, experience, authority, trustworthiness, but perhaps structuring it in a different way that is more aligned with the way LLMs can understand and want to cite the content. So we have the right people in place and the right tools to be able to do the work. Like I said, there are loads of new tools coming onto the market for us to utilize, which we are doing, to be able to track and monitor and analyze what's happening in
I think a really simplified way that I've heard, and see if you agree, Kristina, is we are now seeing a completely new referral traffic source, not only from generative AI sources, but also potentially now from Google AI overviews as well. It's a different sphere. So does that kind of simplified model of, hey, this is a new traffic source and potential like surface to make your brand visible, that is the differentiation here. So the SEO, the blue links, that is one world. But then also now this whole new world that we are entering and have entered, does that warrant it as a separate piece of work in that simplified context?
Yeah, you could see it as a separate piece of work, but you can't do it in isolation, right? So if you're not working with SEO already, you can't just be doing AEO. Well, if you're doing just AEO, you'll be doing some things that will favor the SEO side of things. But there are still other things you need to do that are separate within those two areas.
Yes.
So I would say right now, optimizing for AI, AEO or GEO, as some people call it, that is an add-on to what you're already doing in terms of SEO.
So is it fair to assume then if I am a brand and I have made early steps into my SEO journey, do I just bypass my SEO efforts and focus straight away into this new world that we are in today?
That might be a temptation to do so, but I would say no. We still need everything that comes with SEO in place. Obviously, SEO as a whole has a lot more to do with optimizing the website in terms of technical capabilities, which is a massive important area and the foundation of a good SEO optimized website. And all of that still needs to be in place. You can't just be looking at what content does LLMs want to cite. That is a really important part, but you can't forget all the foundational stuff that SEO will do for your website.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the narrative I've been speaking a lot with different companies at the minute has actually been SEO has been a very siloed effort and also underinvested area for a long time. SEOs in-house typically work in isolation and in a silo with perhaps development and perhaps content. In an ideal world, SEO today, even at its advanced stage, should be touching the whole organization. Everything from, merchandising and e-com functions through to customer service to know where the popular sort of pain points are for the customers and how can we surface that in content, all the way through to development, PR, etc. So now if your organization is still siloed, SEO is still very reactive, it's still very in its own bubble. Now I'm of the belief that in this new world that we have entered now, it is not new to us. It really is time to blow up those silos. And actually, because an SEO in-house, together even with a partner like ourselves, you won't be able to maximize the opportunities that are now at our doorsteps, right?
Absolutely. And I think a very important part of that, I think all those silos need to be broken, but one area that I'm very passionate about is just like the authority work. And that's a really important piece of like making sure that you work with your brand team and your PR team and to really understand where are all the touch points that our brand has online. And I'm not talking about links. I'm talking about just where they are mentioned and everything that because LLMs are training on the content that it sees online and it understands all the touch points that your brand have. So if that's people talking about you in a forum, or if that's people talking about you on social media, or just people mentioning your brand on different websites, the LLMs will scrape or read all of that content and understand the context of your brand and what you're relevant to show up for in the content that it's producing. So that's why you need to work very closely with those departments.
Traditionally, you think, how do I give trust to users? You think, okay, I need a Trustpilot review widget or some kind of review system, but now that is completely removed. That may be one small part of how Google in the AI overview world, but of course in generative AI as well, they'll be using as many sources as possible to verify that, hey, this is a company that I should be referencing in these results.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's move on to the last section, we have two topics. One very quickly of what are the first steps that we can help companies, and also companies can help themselves in order to gain visibility of what on earth is happening. So the first one is, of course, awareness.
Yep.
I think, now we are talking with a lot of companies and a lot of our customers and stakeholders internally around those first baby steps. And that is understanding how AI is impacting your vertical, I think, is the first step. So with AI overviews in particular, we are seeing that Search Console needs to develop more and more in order to really give us much more data around this side. So at the minute, we are leaning more heavily towards third-party tools, right? So I don't know if you want to just give us some context around the tools and what we've been using to understand how AI overviews are impacting.
Well, we use tools like Ahrefs and SEO Monitor to be able to see what's showing up. And like you say, I think it's really important to look at the informational queries to start with and track those to see, are we seeing any shifts here? Like we talked about, that's the kind of step one. But then I think step two, what would you say that is?
For me, it's using much more mature markets to gain insights, I think. The way I've been looking at it, if I'm a B2B company here in Sweden in a, let's say, project management space, how has AI overviews impacted the same space, but in the US?
Yep.
So I've been trying to look for inspiration. It's kind of, you think of the SEO world, we're all looking at what our competitors are doing. In this case, the competitor is Google. What types of queries, how much traffic share are they taking away from AI overviews, and then sort of begin using the SEO principles of sort of reverse engineering how that can impact us as a business, and how can we take the knowledge that we gain from that market insight to then begin deploying into our work today. Good. Is there a third?
Well, is there a third?
I'm not sure at the minute. Of course, like all the way down to the execution. And then, of course, just measuring the impact.
And I think also we talked about competences and the fact that if you have really skilled SEOers, they will be able to do really good work within AEO as well. I think it's to do with how you create the content and how you can think more about topical authority on a kind of a wider way, and how you create the content with the help of copywriters and with the help of AI and all the processes around that. But like I said, you have that in place if you do in SEO. So it's the third one, I guess, is just making sure that you have a really competent SEO team or people doing the SEO, because they will be able to add on the work that we need to do to also be visible in AI overviews.
Yes. Okay, so to end, I think now it is not about preparing, it is here. So, of course, like for our customers, we'll be working and communicating around this topic and what are those first steps and what do we need in order to succeed here. But now, of course, also we may have companies watching that have partners as well, different partners to Precis. And it's all about building that framework now of how do we take those first steps. But I think the overarching takeaway here is that SEO is still important. That should not be put to one side in favor for now just fully focusing on AI overviews and, of course, everything that's happening in generative AI. But actually, that is a separate stream. So now that should be considered as important as your SEO efforts. And, of course, there are synergies between the two. And I think now that is the message we're trying to send out now to all of our people here at Precis, but also, of course, our customers as well, is that now this is here. you need to take those first steps, because if I was to tell you that, we're pre-millennia, Google is going to be launching next year, should we be working on our SEO? The answer is probably yes. So the same is now true for this new world that we are now in. So it is time to take it seriously. It is time now to be working very hard towards these efforts, as it may be contributing a small amount with AI overviews currently and with all of the other platforms, but who knows about tomorrow?
Yes. So let's start preparing.
Yes. So on that note, thank you for listening. Thank you, Kristina.
Thank you, James.
And I'm sure we'll be putting something out on this topic very soon as well. So thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.